All right. So I'm over here tripping out just a small little bit because I maybe for like 2 years now I've known about something called that is being called the Mandela Effect. If you don't know what it is, it's worth going and looking at. Just look up some videos on YouTube called the Mandela Effect. Some of them are junk, but some of them are really like decent. In a nutshell, it's kind of like you just sort of wake up one day and everything's a little bit different than it ever used to be. And when you go and you look at the same things you've always seen and remember them a certain way, everyone around you is trying to convince you that your memory's fucked up and you don't, like it never was that way. You know what I mean? Until then you find some people and they're like, wait, hold on. I remember it that way too. So, for example, like certain logos have changed. Like Chick-fil-A it used to be spelled CHIC dash FIL dash A. I know that it used to be spelled that way because I remember being like looking at the billboards and being like, why the fuck do they spell Chick-fil-A wrong? Why do they spell chick wrong? It's spelled CHICK. Why do they spell it CHIC? I always used to say that. And then one day I started seeing CHICK I was like, hold on. They fixed it? And I started looking at it, started looking up the history of it, and now apparently it was never spelled with a CHIC. It was always CHICK. Like that just never happened. Like that was never that way. I grew up in some reality where it was that way. Like what's going on? So other things like Billy Graham. I don't know if you guys know who Billy Graham is, but he's like this evangelist preacher guy. He's been, he was around for a long time. He did a lot of great things, apparently, and so I remember like him passing away and the funeral being held and all these things in honor of Billy Graham and stuff. And then somehow years later, he passed away again. I don't know how that happened, but I remember the second time doing the same thing, being like, yo, I remember Billy Graham already had a funeral. He already died. Like, what's going on? This is why it's called the Mandela Effect, because people are saying this about Nelson Mandela. Because I remember Nelson Mandela getting out of prison, and then years later, okay, so they had a parade, first off. They had this huge celebration when Mandela got out. They had this whole like day dedicated to Nelson Mandela all around the freaking world. It wasn't like just in wherever, you know what I mean? It was everywhere. They had televised everything. Celebrities were in on it. Social media was in on it. Mandela had a parade and everything, okay? And then not long after that, he died. Well, there's people that claim that they remember Mandela dying in prison, that they know for a fact that Nelson Mandela died while he was in prison because it came out in the newspapers, and they grew up around that time period and whatnot, and they had these things happening and experiences that they went through that they remember. Nelson Mandela never got out of prison. He died in prison. So that's when it started being called the Mandela Effect. But it's worth going and looking at because there's so many things that have changed. Things in the Bible, a Bible that's been sitting on the same shelf in the same bookshelf in your grandma's house for the last 50 years that has always said the same thing, and you go and you open it up right now and there's things in there right now that read differently than they've ever read. Scriptures that are totally, Yeah, there's you guys. I remember as a kid the Berenstain Bears. I remember that cartoon. I remember it being spelled a certain way and everything. And if you go and you look at it now, it's completely different. If you go and you look at Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and you listen to the theme song to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, anybody that grew up listening to that or watching that or knows that they know that, go back now and listen to it, and you'll find that it's different. How is that possible? And when you go and you try to find out where did it change, when did it change, everything you look up online, everyone you ask that doesn't remember, everything you go to will tell you it was never that way. And that's the crazy part about it, because you know that was real to you. That wasn't like some dream you had or like something that you're remembering wrong or something like that. Like something is going on and it's weird. But anyway, I'm saying all that to get to this because this is what's tripping me out like today. John Witherspoon, the guy, if you guys have seen the movie Friday, he was Craig's dad. If you ever watched the Boondocks, he was granddad on the Boondocks. I personally have been a fan of the Boondocks for a long time. I bought the DVD set. I was always quoting the Boondocks. I had a roommate that loved the Boondocks. I was just so into the Boondocks for a long time, right? And Granddad was one of my favorite characters. So I know John Witherspoon played Granddad. I know like what I remember. And this is what I remember. John Witherspoon died years and years ago, maybe like 3-4 years ago. And he died of a heart attack. And I remember because I was like, oh man, Granddad's dead. Like, Granddad passed away. Granddad died from Boondocks. Like, the guy that plays Granddad died. Like, I have this whole memory of, you know, people in this, like, celebrities and things coming out and giving their condolences, all that stuff. And this was way before last week. So when I'm hearing about John Witherspoon died last week at 77, and I don't even know how he died, I'm just tripping out going, no, man, this guy's died. He died years ago. This guy died a long time ago. Like, what are they saying? What are they talking about? He just died. Like, he died again? Like, what's going on? And so I'm telling somebody, like, no, he died from a heart attack a long time ago. And anyway, I go and I look it up because I wanted to see how he died. And they said he went into cardiac arrest. He had a heart attack. So it was the same situation, like, the second time around. And I'm just wondering, am I the only person that remembers this? Or is there anyone else that actually remembers John Witherspoon passing away years ago? Again, the guy that was in Friday, he was Craig's dad. He was the dude from Boondocks that played Granddad. I'm sure he's done a lot more things. I can't remember off the top of my head, but those being like two real notable things that people would remember. And I cannot find any history of this man passing away in the past. I'm sure it'll come out at some point because everything else that I've seen when it comes to the Mandela Effect, for the most part, there's something that comes out where somebody will have like a photo that they took or something from back in the day, and it still shows what it used to say. Like Chick-fil-A used to be spelled without a K. Or you'll find like one of those books that you cross-reference with the Bible. What are they called? They're like, what are those called? Those.
Translation?
No, it starts with R. It's like, it's not like a reference book, but it's like you look up a word and you can find out what it means in Greek. You can find out what it means in Hebrew. You can find out what the context is. And then it takes you to all these different places in the Bible where it uses it in that context and in that same meaning and whatnot.
Index?
It's kind of like an index, but there's this concordance. It's a concordance. Okay, so if you find a concordance, sometimes you can find a concordance that's old enough that will point you to a scripture in the Bible, and it will give you the first couple phrases of the scripture in the concordance, and in that concordance, it will still say what it used to say. And in the Bible that you go to try to find it, it will say what it says now, which is totally different. And if any Bible you go to now, or one that's been sitting on your grandma's shelf for 50 years, it says something different now. But the concordances, some of the older concordances still have how it was always, how we always, you know, those of us that remember how we remember it. But anyway, that's what I wanted to find out. Is anybody remember John Witherspoon passing away before, or is it just me? Let me know.